Hi, I'm Greg Ullin with Reynolds & Reynolds, and this is Connected. Today's a fun episode. I get to sit down with Ashley Yard. Ashley is the Director of Client Success at Goobagoo. She's been there for over 10 years at this point, so seen a lot by way of evolution in chat, certainly, leading into virtual retailing and into all forms of communication with customers. But she's seen quite a bit, so I'm excited for this conversation. Ashley, thanks so much for joining.
Thanks so much, Greg. I'm glad to be here.
Yep, absolutely. So, Ashley, maybe we can start with just a little bit of background about you. We were chatting just before we started recording. You've been with Goobagoo for over 10 years, which is, I mean, you've seen a lot of growth in that 10-year time frame for sure. But then also before that, you had a couple of other automotive retail experiences. So, curious, I guess, maybe from the beginning, how'd you get into auto retail? It always fascinates me because I swear all of us have a story, and then once we're in, it's too much fun to leave. So. I'm curious what your path is like.
Absolutely. I worked in retail for a while and I didn't really love it. So I went over to DME Automotive and started doing client success and support, seeing the call center side of the world. And, working with dealers is really exciting. It's very dynamic. Things are changing. Things are moving very fast. There's a lot of technology. And I think I got sucked in from there.
Yeah, that's good. Well, and again, I go back to it's just, there's so much to learn. It's so much fun. The people are the best people on the planet. So once you're in, it's like, I don't really want to leave, it's just fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
That's great. So, talk a little bit about maybe just your growth with Goobagoo and what you've seen. So, Goobagoo is at this point, I think most would say probably the largest chat provider in automotive. Certainly a leader in the space, and has grown into the leader in virtual retailing, moving into other conversational platforms. So, there's a lot of growth there. But from your perspective, as somebody who's been there for, pretty much since the beginning. What's that? I guess maybe a little bit of behind the curtains early on stuff and what you've seen, how things have grown.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really exciting going from working somewhere where we didn't have an office and I was the only account manager and kind of wondering where things were going to go. But it was a lot of fun to see it grow and implement processes and procedures and scale, to having, 100 clients to having 500 clients, now having over 6,000 clients and being international. It seems like it just moved really quickly. I blinked and I'm like, oh, I've been here 10 years and we're an international company and we're, one of the strongest providers in chat and virtual retailing. It's also exciting that we started with chat, which was a core lead generation service. And we've grown into plugins and third-party integrations into virtual retailing. So it's become a monster of a project where we keep adding more and more features for dealerships and becoming more and more integrated into their day-to-day business. And even with the Reynolds, acquisition, it's just continued to grow and blossom. And I feel like I'm really glad to be here and I'm really lucky to have seen it in the infancy stages and seen it grow and mature to where it is now. And I'm always curious where it's going to go next.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things I noticed, so you probably have some interesting stories, but when I was down there, it's been probably 3 years ago when we first met. It was down there in the office in Florida. And, one of the things that just stood out to me was basically the way that the banks were set up and the teams were set up of chat specialists. Obviously in 2020 that shifted, right? And we've kind of moved to a more virtual model, which is great for everybody. The levels of support are even higher, but, I don't know. It was fascinating. So it was almost set up like for anybody that's been like in a true BDC, like in a bullpen type of place, it was kind of set up like that, where you have people facing each other and two banks running down an aisle and you have a team lead on the end and different colored lights. And it was fascinating to me. So maybe, I don't know, do you have any stories about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the setup. Like you're saying, we had light systems. So when people needed to go on break, the lights would change different colors. We knew who was online. We knew who was coming back from break. It was a very busy, hustling environment where there was a lot of things going on, but there was a method to the madness. And I think we learned from having other offices what we needed to be successful and what made the most sense. And I'm really glad you got to see the Boca office because it was awesome.
Yeah, it was good. On that note, so it was a cool office, a cool space. There was an office for Brad Title. So Brad's pretty well known throughout the industry, right? He's been around for a while. He's done a few different things, Gooby being the latest.
Yeah.
But you got any fun Brad stories?
Oh, so many. Brad's awesome. I feel like you said a lot of good stories, and he's a people person. I mean, he has a lot of customers that are lifelong customers because they followed him through the industry and knows that he's going to put out a good product and that he's going to support the product from beginning to end. And he's always going to look for the new shiny toy or the new feature that's going to bring us to the next level. So he's definitely very innovative. I'm trying to think of a recent story, but I feel like a lot of my stories I'll probably keep quiet.
That's fair. All right, good deal. Well, so you were just talking about all the chat agents and how everybody was set up and kind of in the office and obviously moving in a more remote environment. I don't know. I think our chat agent count has probably grown though, which is great because there's a real need for that human interaction, right? But I wanted to talk to you a little bit too and just get your perspective because you've seen again a lot of change and a lot of growth over the years on AI, right? Artificial intelligence and kind of the growth of the chatbot essentially. So chatbots have been around for a long time. And I always laughed, for years. And I mean, it still kind of is today. You're not going to fool somebody into thinking they're talking to a person, right? Like you just be honest with them. Hi, I'm chatbot Greg or whatever it is. But as AI progresses and language models get better and better, where do you, I guess, kind of see that fitting into the chat world, and not just even chat specifically, but the conversation world, right? What does that look like in a CRM? What does it look like in chat, certainly, but texts and emails and everything else, right? How do you see that evolving, or maybe already is evolved to a certain point?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it has evolved. I know when we started, we had no AI, no chatbots. This was 10 years ago. People were still calling the dealership, still going in. So I feel like it's evolved to where people are finding that blended experience. I think there's a lot of consumers like in the research stage where maybe an AI can handle their questions or tell them if the dealership hours are 10 to 6 or whatever the case is. So very basic questions. It seems like the assistive tech can do that. When customers are engaged and they have a question or they need more information, you kind of need to talk to a person. You need to have something that can understand what you're asking, have some empathy, have some understanding of the situation. So that's really where like the human aspect comes into it. And then when people are ready to buy a car, like in the virtual retailing process of it, that's really when like the dealership involvement is there and they need to kind of hop in and start working the deal or start providing numbers on a sales inquiry or updates on a service, order, if you will. So I think there's this hybrid concept of we don't want to just have people answering all your chats or just, handled that way, but you also want to have a little bit of a blend so that the customer gets what they want in a very quick, efficient manner. And they want convenience. Like I'm a customer too. I want convenience. I want to be able to buy a car from my couch. I don't want to go spend 6 hours in a dealership and get the pitch from the sales guy. And I think it's awesome that our tool allows a combination of all these things. And we're always working on making it better and finding ways to make it more efficient for the consumer, but also for the dealership users as well and maximizing their profits.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I want to roll that back real quick because what I heard was, or I think what I heard, and I just want to make sure, is really kind of 3 layers of chat, right? So you said sort of the research phase, right, of the buying process where people just want information. And I think you're right when you say that AI handles that the best, right? It's fast, it's accurate. Those types of questions that are true information gathering, it adds a lot of speed. So you have that research phase, and that's kind of the AI sweet spot, right? And the AI should be good, and it should continue to improve, and it should get the right information, and it should get it immediately, really, because that's what the customer wants, right? They want that immediacy. So that's the first thing. The second thing I heard you say was kind of an engagement phase where that customers starting to ask more in-depth questions. They're really starting to want to have a conversation, for lack of a better word, right? And that engagement that they have, I would guess, and we can dig into this maybe in a second, but I would guess that conversation, that layer is probably what makes or breaks the conversion, right? Yeah. Either you see defection or you see, a hand raiser.
100%.
Okay, that's good. So I want to come back to that. But so the first thing was the research phase. Second thing was the engagement phase. And then you said when they're ready to buy a car. So kind of the buy ready phase. And that's when you want to get it teed over to a dealer, somebody in the dealership, right? A sales rep, a BDC rep, whatever that is. Because at the end of the day, once that customer is ready to start seeing numbers, they want those numbers to be consistent throughout, right? So you want that flow and that engagement to be the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know there's like three phases and each one has so much depth to it, but you're absolutely right. And I think having a little combination, I think if you're a company that only has one of these three pieces, you're going to have challenges or you're going to have deflection or not as much conversion, but taking each of these and implementing them in different stages of the customer journey, you can really maximize the customer experience as well as the dealership experience, and then everybody wins.
Yeah. So real quick, let's go back to that engagement phase. And, again, an assumption of mine. So I'm just curious your thoughts or what you've seen. But, when you get somebody into a chat or not even a chat, right? You get somebody on a landing page or engaging with you in some way, shape or form. Obviously, not everybody is going to say, I want to buy that car. Right. That's just not going to happen. But the job of, the dealership and then obviously anybody in chat or any other service provider is to get that person to raise their hand, right? To get that conversion, to get them turned over to a salesperson to then allow them to sell. So have you seen a difference, or I guess maybe go a little deeper on what that middle phase means when it comes to conversion?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's, like you said, the make it or break it area. If someone's asking questions, you need to build trust pretty quickly. You need to give them some info, but they're not to the level yet of being ready to buy a car. So you need to give them a little bit of what they're looking for or answer some basic questions. And I know sometimes it's stuff that a chat or a third party can do, and sometimes it's something that the dealership needs to do. So making sure that we're building trust pretty quickly and making sure that you're giving the customer a little bit, but you're also capturing like what the next couple steps are so that you're building. It's almost like having a phone call or having someone on the lot and you're trying to work the same type of process, but you're doing it either through text, through chat, through, Facebook or any kind of those channels, because there's so many channels now that all tie back to one place, that you get to leverage that. And the customer could be in their car, a customer could be on their couch. So again, it's just super convenient for the customer to get a little bit more research or a little bit more information about a car they want to buy, maybe even a video walk around of the car. Saves them a trip to the dealership. They don't have to feel the pressure of a salesperson, but they get the info they want so that they can continue to the buying process.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned something that just stood out to me. I don't know why. It's probably because it's top of mind. It's recent memory. But you said, whether they're on chat, whether they're on Messenger, whatever. So I have never spent more time on Facebook Messenger than I have in the last 2 weeks. So I coached my daughter's softball team, and we were doing tryouts over the last handful of weeks. And I had more parents reach out via Facebook Messenger than any other platform. Like my cell phone number is out there. You can text me. And it was great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not complaining in any way, shape, or form. But what I'm getting to is, what have you seen over the years and kind of maybe most recently on methods of communication, right? So there's a lot of them, but I would assume you have kind of chat on the website. You have text, I'm guessing SMS, right? And then you have Messenger, probably the top three, but I don't know. What do you see?
Yeah, those are the top three for sure. It's funny how often people are on Facebook and they'll start a messenger conversation and they'll think they're talking to someone, at the dealership. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they're talking to a Google rep or, a third party. Those are definitely the top three channels. And it's amazing to me. There's so many layers of channels. You have like Google, you have Apple, you have Auto Trader, things like OfferUp, and all these channels. It's nice that we can connect them into one platform for the dealerships, and then they can communicate to so many users that maybe they didn't communicate before, and they were waiting for those people to either come into the dealership or call the sales line. But now they have like a wider net of channels to kind of service all these customers and kind of keep everything under one umbrella.
Have you noticed a difference in, maybe position in the funnel, like the buying process by channel? So, I would imagine Messenger is like, it's almost a non-personal, like safe way to communicate with somebody, right? You're not texting them. They don't have your cell phone number. So you maintain a little bit more control over that interaction. Chat, if it's on the website, I feel like you're engaged. Maybe you're a little further down if you're looking at a specific vehicle, something like that. But again, these are assumptions. So I don't know if
Sure.
you've noticed anything. I'm kind of curious there.
Yeah, absolutely. And your gut's telling you the right thing. I feel like with Facebook, it's a very non-personal. It's very like you can just ask a question. So we see a lot of non-purchase related or non-serious inquiries come in through Facebook. It's usually people asking for something personal, like I want to speak to someone, or hey, I had this complaint, about an experience or about a situation. So those seem to be not further down the funnel. But people who
Yeah.
are mobile seem to be very engaged and they can pick back up where they leave off in text. So I feel like if you're on the website, whether it's desktop or mobile, or if you're texting, you're pretty engaged. And I feel like texting is starting to be more and more popular. People aren't as timid as, hey, it's pretty personal. Like, Greg, no offense, I'd never text you. But, if someone wants to buy a car, I think they want to have a little bit of space between them and the dealership at first until there's a level of trust or a level of information. But texting allows them to, go back and forth a little bit, build a little rapport, and then they can get further into the funnel. So to your point, I think mobile and SMS are like our lower funnel customers. And then, of course, people in the VR, our virtual retailing tool, they're pretty down the funnel because they've already found a car, they're already engaged, they already kind of know what they're looking for. So I feel like those have a very high conversion rate.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about that a little bit, VR, and get into that because it's I love where we've gone with it. I think it's pretty amazing. I think we've gotten to the point where you can truly have a single deal, right, from that first interaction on the website all the way through a funded e-contracted deal electronically, whether they do it remotely or in the store. It doesn't really matter. It's all the same deal.
Yeah.
So that's a long putt from, hey, let's have some people answering chats, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about maybe an insider's view of that evolution and what it's looked like from your seat, being there for over 10 years and kind of seeing, these phases roll out and ultimately, in the last handful of years, getting to the point where, I mean, the VR platform from Goo, and it's really been built out to the point where you don't need anything else, right? And it's built into the CRM, to desking, to the DMS, to F&I. Like it's all one piece. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Talk about it from an insider's point of view.
Absolutely. And you're right. It's like an all-in-one solution, which is awesome. It's definitely taken some time to get here. There's been lots of versions of it. I didn't realize how much paperwork sometimes goes into each deal and how many different rules and different rates and residuals and state laws and county differences and taxes. So there's layers upon layers of getting all this stuff to work into one tool so that consumers can buy a car online and even have it delivered to their house. So we have a lot of customizations out there for the dealerships to make sure it's following all the requirements, but it's also fitting how they want to work a deal. And we have a lot of partners out there that have helped us kind of take things to the next level. So it started off, with a few features and then it's evolved and now it's evolved even further. So it's really exciting to see where we are. And I'm always curious, okay, well, what are we going to come out with next? And I know one of the big things is, the in-store experience. So being able to maybe start some of the process at home and then finish it in store and have that be seamless for the customer, but also for the dealership. So we're always trying to make the customer experience better so that they'll come back and they'll have more
Right.
business. But we're also trying to help the dealerships simplify their processes, have less tools to log into. So there's a lot of layers to that, but it's really exciting. And I think it's had its growing pains at certain points, but I also think it's really awesome to work with so many different providers, out in the space, like KBB, different DMS providers. Our own internal teams getting to collaborate more together has been really fun to see.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. So you mentioned how much paperwork is included in signing a car. Do you know? So on average, do you know how long, if you printed out every piece of paper that it takes to do a car deal, and you laid it end to end, any guesses on how long that is?
I wouldn't guess like 6 hours, but I don't know. I try to avoid paperwork.
Yeah, it's a lot. So if you actually measure it out, so you have whatever 8.5 by 11 or legal size
Yeah.
paper, it's 39 feet. 39 feet of paper. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy. And I feel like 39 feet of paperwork might take 6 hours. So we'll go there.
Yeah, it's wild. But then you're right when you talk about all the different variables too, and that's one of the biggest things, and one of the biggest hurdles is, you don't set it and forget it on any of this stuff, right? And especially for a dealership who's selling, that's anywhere near a state line, if they're selling across state lines or even county lines, to your point with tax rates, when you look at a tenth of a percent, that can be a lot over 40 grand, right?
Yeah.
Like it can be a dramatic difference. So that can adjust the payment quite a bit. And it's a difficult conversation when you have to sit down with a customer and walk them through why their payment's $56 higher than what they thought it was going to be. Mm-hmm. Or it's a painful conversation with, yourself / your boss when you have to back into a deal and you end up taking profit out of it so you can match the payment.
Yeah.
It's a really frustrating, awkward conversation. So you gotta make sure you're on top of that stuff, because if you're not, then that's when those kind of bad days happen.
Yeah, we don't want any of those bad days.
So let's talk a little bit too about, you mentioned the in-store experience, and one of the things that I'm always interested in, and I can never seem to find, I mean, I know what we do with Gubagoo, but it seems like there's different kind of narratives out there on offering F&I products online, right? And whether that's assisted with somebody in the dealership helping, whether that's, self-guided, where it's just, the customer kind of going through the process. Do you have a take on the value of offering F&I products online? Because I still feel like, well, I know in a lot of ways, because we've asked consumers on many different occasions, we've done these studies where, what do you find value in? And one of the things they always come back to in the car buying process is talking to somebody that can educate them on finance options and insurance products.
Yeah.
Because in so many ways, so many people don't know what's out there, right? And They don't know what these things are. They certainly don't understand the value they bring to them. So why would they spend a few $1,000s on them? But they do definitely see value and crave education, right? So somebody that knows what they're talking about, so they can at least make an informed decision. So anyway, that's a really long way of asking the question. I don't know what your take is on F&I products online.
Yeah, I think to your point, it needs to have, you have to appeal to the customer. So having a little bit of self-education, but also having someone who can answer their questions in real time, who's a subject matter expert, who knows how to explain it, simplify it, give them their options. So I feel like whenever the dealers can interact with the client directly and just answer some of those is the best experience. But giving them a little bit of information to self-serve will get those people to bite and to understand, like, oh, I know a little bit. So now I have better questions that I can go to the dealership with. And so I think it's a hybrid.
Yeah. So, okay, that brings up another thought, and maybe I'm going down the wrong path here. But so you mentioned when we first started talking about the layers of chat, you had research phase, engagement phase, and kind of ready to buy phase. So inside of that ready to buy phase, then I wonder if consumers, or if at least there's the potential for consumers to then revert back to the beginning of that process if they're, once they get into sort of that F&I area. So, they're ready to buy and they've moved into a virtual retail environment and they're engaging with somebody at the dealership. But then maybe they're looking at products, right? They're looking at insurance products and they have a question. So I don't know if it's a pretty straightforward question, then does that put them back into a research kind of phase where AI could be better equipped to answer those questions quickly and immediately versus somebody in the store or like a chat agent? I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think having customers in different phases, you have like your majority of what's going to happen. But to your point, having them get to the buying phase and then have questions, they can still use, we still kind of hybrid the AI as well as the chat specialist. So I feel like there's a little bit of everything going on, even though each phase has its majority shareholder, I guess you could say, or majority thing that it uses. Once they do ask a question, I think having a little bit of the assistive tech or AI and a little bit of a human chat specialist that can understand the complexity of maybe what the question is. Because there wouldn't be anything worse than having an F&I question and have assistive technology tell you something that's wrong. And then as a consumer, you're like, this is a poor experience. So I think making sure you have accurate information and making sure, like you said, it can kind of toggle between all three of the options that are out there is probably the best way that any of this can work.
Yeah, for sure. No, that makes sense. I was kind of thinking through it. It's like, I guess, inside of the overarching funnel, there's these little mini funnels at each point, right? Each point that you have an opportunity to sell, whether it's accessories, whether it's, finance, whether it's insurance products, whatever it is, any opportunity to sell, you have these little mini funnels inside of the broader one. So I don't know. It's an interesting way to look at it. All right. What else? What haven't we talked about, Ashley? What else you want to touch on?
I think there's some benefits or limitations of AI, and I think we're in that spot where, ChatGPT is out there and there's all this new technology. And I think some dealers are scared of it. Some dealers are excited about it. I think there's a level of, hesitation maybe because we're kind of stuck in our ways. And a lot of times it's like, hey, we've always done it this way. Don't put new technology out there. But I do think there's a lot of, like you were talking about earlier, just instant answers or faster responses. That has been one of the big benefits of the assistive tech coming out. I think as well, like monitoring some of the challenges and making sure we get ahead of those is the key to success, because not having a customer who's upset or frustrated, you can lose their trust pretty quickly. So you have to be able to work around that, or to make sure that you're building that out of the gate, and then you're using a blended experience to make sure that they're getting answers, but they're getting the right answers, and you're communicating with them in a way that they want to be communicated with.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So you mentioned ChatGPT. Have you used that much?
I can't. I've tried it, to be honest. I'm one of those hesitation people. I'm like, it's going to be a fad. It's just going to go away. But I've used it and I'm pretty impressed. I feel like this would have been helpful in high school or college. But, I can see how it's so fast. You type in something and it's pretty quick to spit out some answers. But I also see, it's pretty, it's like Cliff Notes, or it's not always 100% accurate. So I think there's a level of hesitation on my part. What do you think?
So here's a fun little, when you have an hour to kill, because I'm sure you got nothing to do.
Yeah.
This is a fun little project. So there's anybody that you probably in a work setting communicate with via email a lot that has their own tone, right? Their own unique tone where it's like, yeah, that's something that fill in the blank would say.
Yeah.
Okay. So for you, who would that be? Just pick one.
Probably Justin Radmaker.
Okay, so with Justin, if you take snippets of his emails, the things that you read, the paragraph that you're like, yeah, that's Justin talking, and you feed it into ChatGPT. So you start a little chat, and it's not just ask a question, but it's, hey, ChatGPT, I work with Justin Rademacher. He does this at Goobagoo, and I want you to write an email for me in his tone.
Okay.
Here's how Justin Rademacher writes emails, and then you just paste those snippets in there. Once they're in there, then you can type out something in your own words, right? So, All right, I want this email written in the tone of Justin Rademacher, and I swear it'll spit it back out to you, and you're like, holy cow, did he actually write that? It's amazing. That's a use case where it's wild how much it can just draw on those specific words or phrases and put it together in that way.
That is awesome. I'm going to try that next time I have some free time.
Yeah, it's a fun use case. I mean, there's a lot of use cases that really bright people are coming up with, and a lot of it is certainly for the big topics that there's a lot of information out there on. Yeah, you can kind of plug and play, but you can also use it in that way where you have the input, which then gets you the output that you want. It's not just an output tool. You can also kind of train it and put it in there. So it acts certainly as machine learning technology where it'll understand your inputs and then provide you the outputs that you're looking for. Yeah,
it's pretty cool. I can see it really having a benefit on the automotive industry and just kind of where things are going in other industries as well. But I think it's pretty unique. So I'm just going to play with it a little bit.
Yeah, I wonder if with chat or even with just live plays or something like that, if we could do that with dealers, right? So if there's a dealer who's a prominent figure in the dealership or in the community or in the region, and especially if they have their own tone, right, their own kind of flair.
Yeah.
If we could do that with them to kind of program out, phrases or how they would respond, I think that could be really interesting.
That would be cool. I know for sure we're using a lot of different technology like predictive text, machine learning, throw this in there maybe. I'm sure our product and dev teams have a lot of tools in their toolbox.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, they're the best, working on things from all different angles for sure. One other thing I wanted to bring up, and I don't know, if this is going down a rabbit hole we don't want to follow, that's fine. But something that's eternally fascinating to me, especially in a remote setting, right? So Goobagoo, naturally, it's a remote setting. It's chat, it's virtual retailing. Everything is pretty much done online, moving to in-store. But again, it's still that blended experience where you're carrying over the remote experience. But e-contracting and e-leasing and everything that goes along with it has grown a lot in the last 3 years for pretty obvious reasons, but not the least of which being that it's the right thing to do, right? There's pressure coming at dealers from all different angles. You have consumers that just want things to be fast and easy. You have lenders that want to move that way for lower risk and speed of transaction and fewer people, that type of stuff. And then you have just the general operating principle of speeding up cash flow, right? Getting money in the bank faster.
Yeah.
So with Goobagoo really moving forward and pushing the envelope in virtual retailing, clearly contracting is a part of that needs to be integrated, and it is. But curious what you've seen from an evolution perspective, because that adds a whole nother layer, right? It's one thing to be able to calculate a deal. Mm-hmm. It's another to be able to connect with lenders and make sure that each one of them has everything that they need. So I don't know if you have any perspective on that at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was like the final stage of everything, right? Is being able to e-sign and use different tools and make sure you have all of the compliance information, all of the legal information to close the deal. And it's really exciting to know that we have that capability and that a lot of the dealers are excited about it. I think there's some hesitation. There's some, hey, we'll do that when the customer comes in the store. But there's a lot of dealers who are like, hey, let's save them a trip. Let's make this fast and convenient for us, fast and convenient for the consumer. I'm just surprised. I thought it was going to take us a lot longer to get there, to be honest, because of all the complexities and the fact that we have that available. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is. So what's next, right? You get to talk to dealers pretty much every day. Yeah. Right. And you have for a while now, right? Mm-hmm. Over a decade. So what are you hearing? What are people wanting to do? And I'm sure some of it is stuff that we can do already. Some of it's stuff that we're going to do in the future. But what are you hearing? Any consistent themes where it's like everybody wants to do this thing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I feel like we get so much feedback of a lot of it is, hey, we love your tool. We want it to do this, or we love this part of it. Can you customize it in this way? So we're constantly evolving how we can customize or how we can more brand it to each dealer or group, so that way it's more in their tone or in their logo or in their color scheme, I guess you can say. So that's what we hear the majority of. We also hear a lot of, hey, can you integrate with this person over here or this CRM provider? So we're always working on more integrations where it can eliminate extra systems, extra cost, extra whatever. So those are like two biggest trends. I think people are also trying to figure out like how to sell more cars with spending less money. So,
sure.
Trying to find ways to cut out any middleman, trying to find ways to simplify the process. So to your point, what else can we add into the virtual retailing flow to make it simpler for the consumer, but also make it simpler from a dealer point of view, or maybe cut out a cost?
Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, Ashley, I could talk to you for hours for sure, but I want to be obviously respectful of your time and let you get back to your team. But what haven't we touched on that we should? Anything else that you want to dive into at all?
No, I think we covered everything. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
For sure. Glad you could hop on. Ashley Yard, Director of Client Success at Goobagoo. Thanks so much, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
All right. Thanks.
Well, it was a fun conversation with Ashley Yard from Goobagoo. I'll tell you, when we first acquired Goobagoo, when Reynolds first acquired Goobagoo, I went down to their office. We kind of talked about it a little bit, Ashley and I did, but I could tell that her and Brad Title definitely have they go back a ways, we'll say. And so I was hoping we could get maybe a story out of her, but didn't happen. So that's okay. Maybe next time, or if you're ever on the phone with Ashley, try to pry something out of her that way. But anyhow, appreciate you joining that conversation. It was a lot of fun for me. I hope you enjoyed it too. Don't forget, you can watch or listen to all episodes of Connected on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify podcasts. Make sure to hit subscribe so you're notified every other week when new episodes are released. Thanks so much for joining today, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.